12 Germans dead for every man lost. 91 days of continuous combat without retreat. A kill ratio that made hardened Wehrmacht officers refuse night patrol. And yet, if you ask 100 Americans today who the Devil's Brigade were, 99 will stare back blankly. December 2nd, 1943. 600 men begin climbing a 1,200-meter vertical cliff in -15-degree darkness. No name tags, no unit flags, no margin for error. They've been trained to kill in absolute silence. What the German defenders sleeping above don't know is that they're about to face the first binational military unit in history, and their worst nightmare has just begun climbing. Winter 1942. The Italian campaign has become a frozen graveyard. Allied forces are hemorrhaging men against German mountain positions that seem mathematically impossible to breach. Churchill is furious. Eisenhower is desperate. They need specialists, soldiers who can fight vertically, who can kill in conditions where normal infantry simply dies. The solution comes from an unlikely partnership. America and Canada agree to create something that has never existed before, a fully integrated binational combat unit, the first Special Service Force. 1,800 men who will share equipment, share command, share blood. Let's talk about erasure. D-Day, Normandy, June 6, 1944. 156,000 troops hit those beaches. There are over 1,000 books written about that single day. 50-plus major films. Every schoolchild knows Omaha Beach. Now consider this. The Devil's Brigade, 1,800 men who fought for 91 consecutive days without retreat, who achieved a 12-to-1 kill ratio against the Wehrmacht, the highest of any unit in World War II, gets approximately one B-grade movie made in 1968, and then silence. The Battle of the Bulge made Patton a household name. Monte la Defensa? You've probably never heard of Colonel Robert Frederick, and he commanded men who killed more efficiently than any American general's forces in the entire war. Here's what the statistics actually show. Normal infantry units in World War II averaged a 3-to-1 or 4-to-1 kill ratio on a good day. The Devil's Brigade? 12-to-1. They suffered a 39% casualty rate, double the average, because they were always sent to the impossible missions. 2,200 German soldiers confirmed killed, 187 of their own dead, 251 Purple Hearts. And when the war ended, when the parades happened, when the medals were distributed to the famous divisions, the 1st Special Service Force received a quiet disbandment order in December 1944. No ceremony, no newsreels, no place in the history books. Why? The answer is simpler and more painful than you think. Monte la Defensa rises 960 meters straight up from the Italian winter like a cathedral wall built by a hostile god. British forces tried to take it in November. 1,200 casualties in 72 hours. American infantry tried next. Same result, bodies frozen to the rocks, medics unable to reach the wounded because the gradient made stretchers useless. By early December 1943, General Mark Clark is out of options. The German positions at the summit control the entire Leary Valley. Without that mountain, the road to Rome stays closed. He calls in Frederick and tells him something between an order and a prayer. Take it, or we're stuck here until spring kills us all. Sergeant Tommy Prince studies the cliff face through binoculars that night. He's Ojibwa from Manitoba, and he learned to track game through Canadian forests where one broken twig means you don't eat. Now he's looking at ice-covered granite that every military manual says is unclimbable in winter conditions. Prince turns to his squad and says something that will become legend in the unit. My ancestors hunted in worse than this. We climb like we're hunting. No light, no maps, just instinct and the man in front of you. December 2nd, 1800 hours. 600 men begin ascending in absolute darkness. The temperature is -15 Celsius. They cannot use ropes because the metallic sounds would alert German sentries. They climb with bare hands because gloves don't grip. Within the first hour, the cold has torn the skin off most men's fingers. Blood freezes before it can drip. You can hear men's teeth chattering, but no one speaks. Frederick's orders are explicit. Any sound louder than breathing gets you and 20 other men killed. Private Henderson from Montana will later write in his diary, I couldn't see the man 3 feet in front of me. Just his breathing, just the scrape of his boots, the smell of pine and fear sweat frozen together. My hands stopped hurting after the first 100 meters. They just went numb and then absent, like they belonged to someone else. I kept climbing because stopping meant freezing to death wedged in a crack. 4 hours of vertical ascent. When they reach the summit at 0200 hours, the German defenders are asleep in their bunkers, absolutely certain no human being could climb that mountain in winter darkness. Prince's squad kills the first sentries with knives, 3 men dead before their bodies hit the ground. By dawn, the Devil's Brigade controls the entire ridgeline. The Germans counterattack for 4 straight days. They throw mortars, machine gun fire, even attempt a bayonet charge up the same cliffs. It doesn't matter. Frederick's men hold every meter. When the mountain finally falls completely on December 6th, it opens the gateway for the Allied advance toward Rome. Churchill will later call it one of the most brilliant small unit actions of the war. The British press doesn't mention it. American newspapers bury it on page 9. But it's at Anzio where the Devil's Brigade earns the name that will haunt the Wehrmacht for the rest of the war. January through May 1944. The beachhead is a stalemate. 30,000 Allied troops pinned down by German artillery, going nowhere, dying slowly. Every conventional attack has failed. Frederick receives new orders: psychological warfare. Make them afraid of the dark. His men begin a campaign of nocturnal terror that turns 12,000 German soldiers into paranoid insomniacs. Every 48 to 72 hours, squads slip into German lines after midnight. They paint their faces black with mixture of charcoal and oil. They move like shadows through barbed wire that would shred normal infantry. Private First Class Joseph Glass from Montana becomes famous in the unit for a raid on March 23rd. He infiltrates a German command post alone, kills 7 officers in their sleep with a trench knife, and leaves a calling card on the forehead of the senior lieutenant, a sticker that reads, "Das Schlimmste kommt noch," the worst is yet to come. The stickers become their signature. Every raid, every kill, another sticker left behind. The psychological effect on Wehrmacht morale is catastrophic. German soldiers begin refusing night patrol duty. Officers report desertion rates climbing 340% in units facing the Anzio sector. Interrogated prisoners tell Allied intelligence that their comrades have started calling the raiders Die Schwarzen Teufel, the Black Devils. One captured German diary entry reads, "They are not men. They are demons who smell like death and move like smoke. You cannot hear them. You cannot see them. You close your eyes in your foxhole and pray they choose someone else tonight." Glass writes a letter home to his mother in April. It's one of the few pieces of correspondence that survives the war. "You asked if I'm scared, Ma. Fear died the first night we painted our faces. Now I'm just empty, hollow. But we do the job because someone has to, and we're the only ones who can." Here's what doesn't make the history books. 39% of the 1st Special Service Force were Canadian. 697 men out of 1,800. But if you read American military histories from the 1950s through the 1980s, 90% of them describe the Devil's Brigade as an American unit with some Canadian volunteers. Corporal Patrick O'Neill from Saskatchewan dies at Anzio on April 8, 1944. The telegram sent to his family reads, "Killed in action while serving with U.S. forces in Italy." There is no mention of the Special Service Force. No mention of the Black Devils. His mother dies in 1983, still believing her son fought in a regular American infantry division. She never knew he was part of the most elite killing unit of the entire war. Canada doesn't officially recognize the Devil's Brigade until 2013, 69 years after the unit disbanded. 134 Canadian soldiers killed in action. 92% of their families never knew what unit their sons and husbands actually served in. June 4, 1944. The 1st Special Service Force becomes the first Allied unit to enter Rome. They fight building to building, clearing German snipers from bell towers and machine gun nests from Renaissance courtyards. By nightfall, 2 million Roman citizens are liberated. The streets erupt in celebration. June 5, the next morning, General George Patton stages a parade down the Via del Corso. Eisenhower holds a press conference in front of the Palazzo Venezia. Mark Clark poses for photographs at the Colosseum, cigar in mouth, looking every bit the conquering hero. And the Devil's Brigade? They receive orders to move north to the next objective. No parade, no press conference, no mention in the official liberation ceremony. They pack their gear in silence and leave Rome the same way they entered it, unnoticed by history. December 1944. The war in Italy is winding down. The 1st Special Service Force receives its final orders: disbandment. After 91 days of continuous combat, after bleeding 39% casualties, after achieving what every military analyst said was impossible, they get a quiet dinner at base camp and discharge papers. There is no ceremony at the Capitol, no joint session of Congress, no medals presented by Roosevelt or King George, just handshakes, a few photographs that will yellow in forgotten albums, and train tickets home. Here's why they were erased, and it has nothing to do with their performance. They were too good, which paradoxically made them forgettable. Hollywood needs struggle. It needs underdogs barely surviving against impossible odds. The Devil's Brigade didn't barely survive. They dominated with brutal efficiency. There's no Saving Private Ryan moment when your kill ratio is 12-1. There's no dramatic last stand when you never retreat. Their story was too clean, too professional, too lethal to sell as entertainment. And politically, they were a nightmare for the Cold War narrative that followed. From 1945 through 1989, America needed a simple story. We saved the world alone. A binational unit where Canadians made up 39% of the force? Too complicated. Indigenous soldiers like Tommy Prince, who outperformed white officers' expectations? Didn't fit the script. Immigrants and First Nations people proving that diversity creates military superiority? The 1950s weren't ready for that conversation. Worse still, most of their tactical innovations remained classified until 1985. Night raids, psychological warfare, the sticker campaign, all of it locked behind national security protocols for 40 years. By the time the files were declassified, the veterans were in their 60s and 70s. The media had moved on to Vietnam, to Gulf War, to new conflicts with new heroes. When the old men finally tried to tell their stories, people didn't believe them. You killed 12 Germans for every man lost? Sure, buddy. Tell me another one. Colonel Frederick, in one of his last interviews before his death, said something that cuts to the bone. We did what needed to be done. History remembers the loud, not the lethal. We were too quiet, too efficient, too damn good at killing to make good television. History isn't objective. It's a popularity contest where the loudest voices win and the most efficient killers get footnotes. The Devil's Brigade proved something the world wasn't ready to accept in 1944 and still struggles with today. That diversity isn't a weakness to be tolerated, but a weapon to be wielded. Americans, Canadians, Indigenous soldiers, immigrants, farm boys, and city kids, thrown together, they became the most lethal small unit in the entire war. But that story required nuance, required acknowledging that heroism doesn't respect borders or skin color, and post-war America wanted simplicity. Today, 99% of Americans and Canadians have never heard of the 1st Special Service Force, but the Wehrmacht remembered. The men they killed remembered. 1,800 soldiers, 2,200 confirmed enemy dead, 91 days in hell. And almost nobody knows their names. So ask yourself this: how many other heroes are dissolving into silence right now, not because they failed, but because their stories are too complex, too uncomfortable, too real for Hollywood to bother with? The answer should terrify you, because if we can forget men who achieved a 12-1 kill ratio, we can forget anyone.